The Chronovisor. One of the most intriguing objects hidden in the Vatican's secret archives is known as the Chronovisor. It is a device that supposedly can see events anywhere, and at any time in history. For years, its existence was only a rumor, and no evidence of the Chronovisor was ever found. It is said that this device allowed its operator to witness events at any time and place in the past, and although it cannot be used to physically travel through time, it can be programmed to display specific events on a screen. The true story of the Chronovisor was revealed by Father Marcello Pellegrino Ernetti. Ernetti was a Benedictine monk, a respected historian of ancient music, author, physicist, and exorcist. This monk claims to have witnessed countless historical events firsthand with the Chronovisor. During a ferry trip on the Grand Canal in Venice, Ernetti told French father and theologian François Brune that he had seen multiple events that proved that the events in the Bible had happened, and he explained that he had used a device called the Chronovisor for these purposes. He explained how instead of transporting people through time, the Chronovisor tuned into past events and displayed them as if it were a time travel television. Brune was stunned by the story, as he knew Father Pellegrino Ernetti as a serious man. Ernetti was cultured, well-educated, and respected in the church, and was not given to exaggeration. Ernetti claimed to have heard speeches by Napoleon and Mussolini, as well as other important historical figures. Brune wanted to know about the events in the Bible, and Ernetti said he had seen the last days of Jesus, including his crucifixion. He also explained having seen the creation of the Ten Commandments, the Last Supper, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and more Bible events. Ernetti said he did not build the Chronovisor by himself but had help and proceeded to tell the story. Father Ernetti explained that in 1952, he was sent to Milan to work at the Catholic University's electroacoustic laboratory with Father Agostino Gemelli. Among many other things, Father Gemelli was a prominent Italian priest and psychiatrist. He was the Vatican's scientific advisor at that time, and had founded the San Giovanni Hospital and the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart, which became one of Italy's leading Catholic universities. On September 15, Father Ernetti says he was working with Father Gemelli on a recording of Gregorian chants, but the tape recorder's microphone was failing. Frustrated, Father Gemelli raised his head and made a gesture of frustration towards the sky, asking for help from his deceased father. An incorporeal voice responded from the tape recorder and said, "Of course, I will help you. I am always with you." The voice surprised Father Gemelli. Immediately, he recognized the voice and trembled, as Father Ernetti stated. He thought it could be the devil himself. But then the voice reassured him, saying, "But, Zucchini, it's clear, don't you know it's me?" The voice used Father Gemelli's childhood nickname. The father thought he had received a gift from God. Meanwhile, Ernetti wondered if there was a scientific reason for what had happened. He wondered if the sights and sounds of people in the past somehow continued to exist long after they happened, and if so, he questioned whether these moments could be detected. François Brune was obviously surprised by the story, and asked what happened to the device. Ernetti said that once they realized what they had discovered, they brought their findings to the attention of the Catholic Church. The Pope at the time was Pope Pius XII, and upon hearing what had happened, he became so interested in the project that he authorized Vatican funding and full support for the continuation of this research. The Pope's motives for supporting the Chronovisor were based on wanting to demonstrate the verification of biblical events, thus giving strength to the Catholic faith. In addition to the Pope's full support, it turned out that Gemelli was president of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, making it even easier for him to organize the project and assemble an extraordinary team of professionals to explore the possibility of listening to, or seeing events from the past. Ernetti gathered a team of 12 scientists. Enrico Fermi participated in the schematics. Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist who worked on space technology for the United States after World War II under Project Paperclip, also participated. Other prominent scientists from around the world also worked on the invention, Father Ernetti said, but he refused to give more names. Once this team had assembled the Chronovisor, Father Ernetti explained that they were able to tune into the past and see it through something similar to a television screen. They saw a speech by Benito Mussolini, and as they went back further in time, they saw a speech by Napoleon Bonaparte, then observed a market in ancient Rome during the time of Emperor Trajan, and saw Cicero addressing the Roman Senate. Father Ernetti said his greatest achievement occurred in January 1956, when the Chronovisor team was able to tune into the Last Supper and later see the crucifixion of Christ. According to Ernetti, after seeing the Passion of Christ on the Chronovisor, he was marked and vowed never to see it again. However, shortly after, Pope Pius XII died, and he was replaced by John XXIII in 1958. He continued to support the Chronovisor project but ultimately decided to destroy the device to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands after seeing the apparatus in full operation. The Pope's decision to destroy the Chronovisor was based on its ability to go anywhere and anytime in the past, and could be used as a powerful weapon to reveal state secrets or be used for blackmail. Therefore, the Pope feared that in the wrong hands, the Chronovisor could motivate a dictatorial government the world had never seen before, so he ordered the machine to be dismantled and prohibited anyone from talking about it. Ernetti said that this was the first time he had spoken about it in over 10 years. The public's fascination and credibility towards Father Ernetti's stories began to fade when several issues with his story started to come to light. Firstly, the person who could best corroborate his story, Father Gemelli, had died in 1959 before Ernetti started telling his story. Scientist Enrico Fermi died in 1954, and Werner von Braun lived until 1977, and neither of them ever mentioned the Chronovisor. In 1972, a weekly newspaper and a magazine dedicated to paranormal topics presented low-quality photos that Father Ernetti supposedly gave as evidence. According to these publications, the father claimed that this image came from the Chronovisor, which was of the face of Christ hanging on the cross at Calvary. A reader of one of the publications quickly identified the image and sent its origin to the editors. It was a photograph that cost 100 lire and was available in the gift shop called Santuario dell'Amor Misericordioso in the city of Collevalenza. The photo was a detail of a wooden carving of Christ on the cross by the Spanish sculptor Cullet Valera. The published image was simply reversed and distorted, making it a bit blurry. It is also said that Father Ernetti claimed to have used the Chronovisor to reconstruct the lost Greek work, Thyestes, and transcribed part of it. This version of Thyestes was written by the poet and playwright Quintus Ennius, and was performed in Rome shortly before he died in 169 BC. When a fragment of the work he had written was finally shown, it was quickly questioned by an expert. Dr. Catherine Owen Eldred, a classics doctor from Princeton, found that a series of Latin words in the text did not appear until about 250 years later, and other words were allegedly misplaced or misused. Father Ernetti also had evasive behavior when asked to speak publicly about the Chronovisor on one occasion. It all began when Professor Giuseppe Marasca wrote to Father Ernetti, which led to phone calls and an in-person meeting. Marasca introduced Father Ernetti to Count Lorenzo Mancini Spinucci, founder of the Society of Psychophony and organizer of a conference on paranormal phenomena in Udine. Father Ernetti agreed but then threatened to withdraw if not all speakers were professionals, refusing to speak alongside parapsychologists and charlatans. After many back and forths, he finally cancelled his participation. But many believe that he only cancelled because his superiors might have found out about this talk beforehand and forced him to come up with an excuse not to show up. When speaking with Ernetti in the year before his death, Father Brun discovered that he was still fixated on his story. Ernetti told Brun that US and Russian intelligence agencies had sent spies to follow him and that he could not leave the monastery without a bodyguard escort. Ernetti also had a new explanation for his photo of Christ. He said that a Spanish nun had had the same vision of Jesus and had given instructions to the sculptor who had created the work. This mysterious Spanish nun had moved to Italy, where Father Ernetti met her, so his story was that they had shared the same vision, and that although his photo was of a sculpture, it was a representation of the reality he had seen. The truth was that the whole thing was confusing, and the Spanish nun could not corroborate the story as she had died. According to Ernetti, the Chronovisor was still stored somewhere deep in the vaults of the Vatican. He also claimed that just a couple of months before, on September 30, 1993, he had responded to an invitation from the Vatican with 2 other surviving members of the Chronovisor team, where he presented to 4 cardinals and an international committee of scientists. Later, when the publisher Nuevo Paradigma began working on the English translation of Peter Cras's book about Father Ernetti, they wanted to find out more information about the enigmatic monk. They received a letter from someone claiming to be a distant relative of Father Ernetti and who called him Uncle Pellegrino. This person agreed to tell details of Father Ernetti's last days on the condition of anonymity. After receiving a call informing him that his uncle was on his deathbed, this person visited him. In those final moments, Father Ernetti confessed to having struggled for decades with a story that had grown out of control, becoming a mortal sin, with his lies about the Chronovisor. He admitted to not having seen Niestis in the Chronovisor, but having experienced it in a past life. He confessed to having forged the photo of Christ, and to having built the Chronovisor with the help of an assistant, although they failed to make it work. It almost worked once. They say were some of Father Ernetti's last words. In my opinion, this story is very interesting, not only for the story told about a device capable of seeing the past, but rather because the person telling it was a respected member of the church. Father Ernetti was highly prepared, with 3 university degrees, a degree in philosophy and letters, studied ancient languages, and had a specialty in quantum physics. In addition to all of this, he had a very high interest in music. He played the piano, was an expert in polyphonic harmony, and studied electronic xylography. It is for this extensive resume, and not for anything else, that the Pope would have agreed to finance the project and research of the Chronovisor at 100% when it was presented to him as a proposal. And there is no need to mention the list of merits of the aforementioned Father Gemelli, who also worked on the project. Personally, when a person with high levels of preparation and knowledge decides to risk their reputation and career of several decades to reveal a truth, I stop to listen and pay close attention. And even more so, when there are indications of the possibility of wanting to silence them and ridicule their statements. In my opinion, Father Ernetti respected the Pope's order for years to never speak about the Chronovisor, out of respect for the church he loved so much. However, he gradually decided to start speaking and revealing the truth so as not to take that secret to the grave and deprive the world of this discovery. As for the silence of the scientists on the team that built the Chronovisor, it is possible that they followed the Vatican's prohibition to not speak publicly about the project to the letter. The Vatican is like any other governmental institution, and for big secret projects like this, it always takes all necessary measures to ensure the confidentiality of all participants. Secondly, it is important to consider that at that time, professional reputation was everything, and involvement in an absurd rumor could have caused the total discrediting of a professional's career of that nature. Personally, when I read the story of Father Ernetti, I have no choice but to see the conspiratorial plot and the efforts of a powerful institution that does everything in its power to discredit an extraordinary human being trying to reveal the truth to his brothers in the world. In my opinion, the mystery does not lie solely in the truth about the existence of the Chronovisor, but in the campaign focused on discrediting a highly prepared professional like Father Ernetti. The rumors, confessions, the people who claim that the father said this and that, the photos, the mysterious Spanish nun, the reconstruction of the work of Quintus Ennius, and supposed confessions of Father Ernetti to his mysterious nephew, are ways to cloud the truth in order to ridicule, mixing truth with lies to create doubt and disinterest. These types of campaigns are not new and will continue in the future. It is not the first time it has happened, and it will definitely not be the last. Just remember, it was not just some crazy person who made these statements. The story of the Chronovisor is one of the first stories of someone who claimed to have built a machine capable of traversing time and space. Father Ernetti's account is one full of enigmas, and leaves a sad feeling that something extraordinary has been lost forever. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give us a like and to subscribe to our channel, if you haven't already. We greatly appreciate your attention, and hope to see you again in our next video.